The massive doors of the Galactic Military Academy slid open with a soft hiss, revealing corridors that stretched beyond what human eyes could easily see. Cadet Kim Jae stepped through the entrance, his regulation uniform feeling stiff and unfamiliar against the skin. The backpack on his shoulders contained everything he owned that mattered, which wasn't much compared to the advanced equipment cases other cadets wheeled behind them. The Academy station rotated slowly in space, creating artificial gravity that felt almost like home. Almost, but not quite. Everything here was built for beings much larger and stronger than humans. The doorways towered overhead, the corridors were wide enough for massive alien forms, and even the simple act of walking required adjustment to the slightly different gravitational pull. Jay followed the flow of new arrivals toward the registration hall, his eyes taking in species he had only seen in textbooks. Towering Vorthak warriors moved through the crowd like living mountains, their chitinous armor plates clicking softly with each step. Their four arms moved with practiced military precision, and their eyes glowed with an inner fire that spoke of countless battles won. Near the registration desks, a group of Etherian cadets floated gracefully above the ground, their translucent forms shimmering like living glass. They communicated through color changes in their skin, creating patterns that were beautiful to watch but impossible for other species to understand without translation devices. The Nagar instructors slithered between groups of cadets, their serpentine forms moving with liquid smoothness. For arms allowed them to multitask in ways that impressed and intimidated the newcomers. One instructor was simultaneously checking 3 different data tablets while gesturing to a 4th cadet, never missing a beat in any conversation. Jay joined the line for human cadets, which was disappointingly short. Only 12 humans had qualified for admission this cycle, compared to hundreds from a more established military species. The humans stood together, looking small and fragile next to their alien counterparts. "First time off Earth?" asked the cadet in front of him. She was tall for a human, but still shorter than most aliens present. Her name tag read Li Min. "First time off Luna Colony, actually." Jay replied, "You, born on Mars, trained on Europa, but this place makes everywhere else look tiny." Min gestured around the vast hall. "My instructors back home said humans have been trying to get into this academy for 50 years. We're still proving we belong here." The line moved forward slowly. Ahead of them, a Vorthak cadet was arguing with a registration clerk about weapon storage policies. His voice boomed across the hall, causing smaller species to flinch and move away. The argument was in Galactic Standard, but the aggressive tone needed no translation. "That's War Prime Gexmol," Min whispered. "I read about him during transport. His family has produced military leaders for 12 generations. He's never lost a combat simulation." Jay watched the massive alien gesture angrily with all 4 arms. Even in disagreement, Gexmol moved with the confidence of someone who had never faced a challenge he couldn't crush through superior force. His armor bore the ceremonial markings of his homeworld's warrior caste, and other Vorthak cadets treated him with obvious respect. "Human cadets, step forward," called a Nagari clerk, her voice carrying a tone that suggested she had better things to do. The snake-like alien barely looked at them as they approached. "Kim Jae, Lee Min, Park Sung, Choi Hannah, yes, all 12 present. Take these data tablets and report to Section 7 for orientation." The tablets were heavy, designed for species with greater physical strength. Jay struggled to hold his comfortably while accessing the interface. The text was in Galactic Standard, but the controls required fingers longer than his to operate easily. Around them, other species received their assignments with efficient ease. The Vorthak cadets moved in formation toward the combat training sectors. The Etherian floated toward the zero-gravity simulation chambers. Even the insectoid klaxons, with their strange clicking language, seemed to know exactly where they belonged in this vast institution. "Attention all cadets," announced a voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "Welcome to the Galactic Military Academy. You represent the finest warriors, strategists, and defenders your species have to offer. Some of you come from proud military traditions spanning millennia. Others are newcomers to galactic defense." Jay felt the weight of those words. Everyone knew which category humans fell into. During your time here, you will be tested, challenged, and pushed beyond your perceived limitations. Only those who prove themselves worthy will earn the right to serve as galactic defenders. Many of you will fail. This is expected and acceptable. The human cadets exchanged glances. The message was clear. They were here on probation, constantly having to prove they deserved their spots. As they made their way through the corridors towards Section 7, Jay noticed how other cadets looked at them. Some showed curiosity. Others displayed barely concealed contempt. A few Vorhack warriors pointed and made comments in their native language that caused their companions to laugh. The academy was vast, beautiful, and intimidating. It represented the pinnacle of galactic military training, a place where legends were born and heroes were forged. But for the small group of human cadets walking through its halls, it felt more like a test they hadn't studied for, in a language they barely spoke, surrounded by competitors who saw them as nothing more than an interesting experiment in diversity. The training deck buzzed with activity as dozens of cadets practiced their combat skills. Massive Vorhack warriors demolished reinforced barriers with their bare hands, while graceful Etherian cadets floated through obstacle courses that would challenge any ground-bound species. The sound of clashing weapons, breaking materials, and shouted instructions filled the air. Kim J sat alone at a tactical simulation terminal in the corner, running through battle scenarios on the holographic display. The other human cadets were scattered around the deck, each struggling with equipment that seemed designed for beings twice their size. The weapons were too heavy, the armor didn't fit properly, and even the simple training tools required more strength than most humans possessed. 3 weeks at the academy had taught Jay one important lesson. Humans were tolerated, not welcomed. Every day brought new reminders that they were the weakest species present. During physical training, they finished last. In strength competitions, they couldn't even participate. The other cadets had stopped trying to hide their amusement at human limitations. The simulation terminal chimed softly as Jay completed another tactical exercise. His scores were excellent, but tactical thinking seemed to matter less than raw physical power in most evaluations. He was reviewing his performance when a large shadow fell across his workstation. "Move away from their soft skin," rumbled a deep voice above him. Jay looked up to see War Prime Gexmo looming over his chair. The massive Vorhack warrior stood nearly 3 meters tall, his forearms crossed in display of barely contained aggression. Behind him, 2 other Vorhack cadets flanked his position like bodyguards waiting for orders. "I'm using this terminal for my assigned training time," Jay said calmly, not moving from his seat. "The schedule shows I have another 15 minutes. Gexmo's eyes glowed brighter, a sign of rising anger in his species. "I don't care about schedules made by weak administrators. Real warriors take what they need when they need it." Around the training deck, other cadets began to notice the confrontation. Conversations died down as aliens turned to watch what was happening. Some looked curious, others seemed to anticipate entertainment. None appeared ready to intervene on behalf of the human. "Stand up," Gexmo commanded, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to instant obedience. "Face me properly when I speak to you." Jay saved his progress and slowly rose from the chair. Even standing, he barely reached the middle of Gexmo's chest. The size difference was almost comical, like a child facing an adult, but nobody was laughing. The tension in the air had grown thick enough to feel. "You know what I think about humans being here?" Gexmo asked, leaning down so his face was closer to Jay's. "I think it's a joke. A stupid experiment that wastes everyone's time." "That's your opinion," Jay replied quietly. "You're entitled to it." "My opinion?" Gexmo's laugh was harsh and mocking. "It's a fact, Softskin. Your species has no business pretending to be soldiers. You're weak, slow, and fragile. You break when real warriors would barely notice the damage." More cadets had stopped their training to watch. The confrontation was becoming a spectacle, with aliens gathering in a loose circle around the 2 figures. Some were recording the incident on their personal devices, likely to share later as entertainment. Lehman appeared at the edge of the crowd, her face tight with worry. She caught Jay's eye and shook her head slightly, warning him not to escalate the situation. But Gexmo had noticed the exchange. "Is that your female trying to protect you?" The Vorhack warrior's voice dripped with contempt. "How touching." Maybe she can fight your battles since you're obviously too weak to defend yourself. That comment brought angry murmurs from the other human cadets present, but they were vastly outnumbered and outweighed. Any group confrontation would end badly for them. I don't want any trouble, Gexmol, Jay said, keeping his voice steady. I just want to complete my training. Trouble? Gexmol straightened to his full imposing height. You think you can avoid trouble by being polite? By speaking softly and hoping I'll go away? The alien warrior began to pace in front of Jay, his four arms gesturing as he spoke. Each movement was calculated to display his physical superiority, his natural weapons clearly visible along his forearms. Let me tell you something about Trouble, Soft Skin. Trouble found your entire species the day the Galactic Council decided to let you play soldier. You don't belong here among real warriors. You're an insult to every being who earned their place through strength and skill. Gexmol stopped pacing and faced Jay directly. The training deck had fallen completely silent except for the distant hum of machinery. Every alien present was watching, waiting to see how this would end. So here's what's going to happen, Gexmol continued, his voice dropping to a dangerous growl. You're going to apologize for wasting everyone's time. You're going to admit that humans don't belong in this academy. And then you're going to request transfer back to whatever soft world you came from. Jay felt the weight of dozens of alien eyes upon him. This moment would define not just his own future at the academy, but how every human cadet would be treated going forward. Show weakness now, and they would never recover from it. I'm not going to do any of that, he said simply. Gexmol's eyes flared bright with rage. Without warning, he shoved Jay backward with one massive hand, sending the human stumbling toward the wall. The crowd are watching aliens press closer, sensing that words were about to become violence. Then I'll make you, Gexmol snarled, advancing with predatory intent. Jay caught himself against the wall, his heart racing but his mind surprisingly calm. Years of surviving in Luna Colony's rough sectors had taught him that panic was a luxury he couldn't afford. The gathered aliens expected one of two things. Either he would submit and crawl away in defeat, or he would try to match Gexmol's strength and be crushed for his foolishness. He planned to give them neither. Gexmol advanced slowly, savoring what he believed would be an easy victory. The massive Vorthax's forearms spread wide in a classic intimidation display, showing off the razor-sharp bone spurs that lined his forearms. His glowing eyes fixed on Jay with predatory focus, like a hunter cornering wounded prey. Last chance, soft skin, Gexmol rumbled, his voice carrying across the silent training deck. Apologize now, and maybe I'll let you limp away with some dignity intact. The watching crowd pressed closer, forming a rough circle around the confrontation. Jay could see Li Min at the edge of the group, her face pale with worry. Other human cadets stood nearby, looking helpless and afraid. Some of the alien spectators were already placing bets on how quickly the fight would end. Jay pushed away from the wall and took a step forward, appearing to accept the challenge. This drew surprised murmurs from the crowd. Most had expected him to try running or begging for mercy. The idea that a human might actually stand and fight seemed to amuse them. Gexmol's laugh was deep and threatening. Brave little warrior want to play? Good. Let me show everyone what happens when insects try to sting giants. The Vorthax warrior lunged forward with surprising speed for his size, all four arms reach and grab and crush his tiny opponent. His species had conquered worlds through overwhelming physical force, and he had never met an enemy he couldn't simply overpower. But when his massive hands closed on empty air, confusion replaced confidence on his face. Jay had dropped low and rolled to the side at the last possible moment, using Gexmol's own momentum against him. As the warrior stumbled forward, thrown off balance by expecting resistance that never came, Jay moved with fluid precision behind him. The human's hands found specific points along Gexmol's lower back, pressing with surgical accuracy at nerve clusters that existed in most humanoid species. Jay had spent months studying alien anatomy during his academy preparation, memorizing pressure points and weaknesses that might level the playing field against stronger opponents. Gexmol's legs suddenly buckled as key muscle groups seized up. His nervous system, overwhelmed by precisely targeted stimulus, sent conflicting signals to his limbs. The towering warrior, unable to control his forward motion, crashed face-first into the tactical terminal with a thunderous impact that cracked the reinforced housing. The entire sequence had taken less than 3 seconds. The training deck erupted in shocked silence. Dozens of alien cadets stared in disbelief at the scene before them. Gexmol, the undefeated warrior from a species known for their combat superiority, lay stunned on the floor while a human barely half his size stood calmly nearby. Jay wasn't even breathing hard. His movements had been economical and precise, wasting no energy on flashy displays or unnecessary force. He had simply used physics, anatomy knowledge, and timing to turn his opponent's strength into a liability. Gexmol struggled to push himself up, his limbs still not responding properly to his commands. The temporary neural disruption would fade quickly, but his pride would take much longer to recover. He had been defeated not through superior strength or advanced weapons, but through a technique he didn't understand by an opponent he had completely underestimated. "Impossible," whispered one of the Vorthack witnesses. "Humans are weak. Everyone knows this." "Maybe we don't know as much as we thought," replied an Etherian cadet, her translucent form shimmering with what might have been respect or curiosity. The crowd began to murmur and buzz with excitement. Personal recording devices captured every angle of Gexmol's humiliation, while cadets from different species debated what they had just witnessed. Some insisted it must have been luck or trickery. Others wondered what other surprises the supposedly weak humans might be hiding. Li Min pushed through the crowd to reach Jay's side, her eyes wide with amazement and concern. "How did you do that?" she whispered urgently. "Where did you learn to fight like that?" "Luna Colony wasn't exactly a safe place to grow up," Jay replied quietly, watching as Gexmol finally managed to get his legs under him again. "When you can't win through strength, you learn to win through strategy." Gexmol stood shakily, his glowing eyes now filled with confusion and rage. The warrior, who had never experienced defeat, was struggling to process what had happened to him. His followers looked equally bewildered, uncertain how to react when their leader had been brought low by someone they considered barely worth noticing. "This isn't over, human," Gexmol snarled, but his voice lacked its earlier confidence. "Next time I'll be ready for your tricks." "There won't be a next time if you leave me alone," Jay said calmly. "I don't want to fight anyone. I just want to train and prove that humans belong here." Around them, the crowd was already beginning to disperse, but the conversations were animated and intense. Word of what had happened would spread through the academy within hours. The human who had defeated a Vorthack warrior in single combat would become either a legend or a target. Jay suspected it would probably be both. The Academy's communication networks buzzed with activity as news of the confrontation spread faster than wildfire through a dry forest. Within an hour, every cadet on the station had heard some version of what happened in the training deck. The stories grew more dramatic with each telling, but the basic facts remained shocking. A human had defeated a Vorthack warrior in single combat. Cadets gathered in small groups throughout the corridors, cafeterias, and recreation areas, debating what they had witnessed or heard about. The impossible had become reality, and nobody seemed sure how to process it. In the mess hall, a table of Klaxon cadets clicked and chirped excitedly as they shared footage from their recording devices. Their insectoid features made emotions difficult to read, but their animated movements suggested fascination rather than dismissal. The human moved like liquid. One of them translated into Galactic, standard for benefit of nearby listeners. No wasted motion. Every action had purpose. At another table, Etherian cadets floated in a tight circle, their translucent forms shifting through rapid color changes as they communicated in their visual language. An observer with a translation device caught fragments of their conversation. Unexpected variables, tactical adaptation, dangerous assumptions, but nowhere was a reaction more intense than among the Vorthack cadets themselves. Gexmol sat alone at their usual table, his armor still scratched from his collision with the terminal. His followers maintained respectful distance, unsure how to approach their leader after his public defeat. The warrior who had never lost a fight stared at his untouched meal, replaying those crucial seconds over and over in his mind. Every time he thought he understood what had happened, the memory slipped away like smoke. One moment he had been charging forward to crush an inferior opponent. The next he was lying on the floor with his nervous system refusing to obey his commands. Across the mess hall, Jay sat with the other human cadets, picking at his food while trying to ignore the stares and whispered conversations happening around them. Li Min leaned close to speak quietly. "Commander Zelfek wants to see you," she said. "Her aide came by while you were in the medical bay getting checked for injuries." Jay's stomach tightened. Commander Zalfek was the Academy's chief tactical instructor, a Keruvian whose multiple sensory stalks could analyze combat situations with computer-like precision. If she wanted to speak with him, it probably meant trouble. "Did she say what about?" he asked. "Just that you should report to her office after evening meal." "But Jay..." Min's voice carried concern. "Some of the instructors are saying you used illegal combat techniques. They're calling for an investigation." Before Jay could respond, a commotion at the entrance drew everyone's attention. Commander Zalfek herself entered the mess hall, her 4 sensory stalks swiveling to scan the room. Her presence immediately commanded respect from every species present. Cadets straightened in their seats, and conversations died to whispers. The Keruvian commander's stalks focused on different groups as she walked through the room, taking in the obvious tension and excitement. When her gaze found Jay, all 4 stalks turned toward him with laser-like intensity. "Cadet Kim," she said, her voice carrying easily across the suddenly quiet hall. "Stand and approach." Jay rose on unsteady legs, aware that hundreds of alien eyes were tracking his movement. The walk across the mess hall felt like a journey of kilometers rather than meters. When he reached Commander Zalfek, he snapped to attention as best he knew how. "Commander," he said simply. "At ease, Cadet." Her stalks continued their detailed examination of him, as if trying to solve a puzzle. "I have reviewed the security footage of today's incident. Show me exactly what you did to Cadet Gexmol." The request sent shocked murmurs through the assembled cadets. Public demonstrations of combat techniques were unusual, especially when they involved controversial incidents. "Commander, I don't want to cause more trouble," Jay began, but she cut him off with a gesture. "That wasn't a request, Cadet. It was an order." She turned to scan the room. Cadet Mordex, approach and volunteer as a demonstration partner. A younger Vorthak warrior rose reluctantly from his table. He was smaller than Gexmol, but still towered over Jay by more than a meter. His expression showed clear reluctance to participate in whatever was about to happen. "Commander," Mordex protested in his rumbling voice, "surely this is unnecessary. The human got lucky once. It proves nothing. Your opinion is noted and dismissed." Commander Zalfek replied curtly. "Assume a combat stance and attempt to grapple the human cadet. Use normal force, but stop before causing injury." The entire mess hall held its breath as the 2 cadets faced each other. Mordex looked embarrassed to be participating in what he obviously considered a waste of time, while Jay appeared calm but reluctant. "Begin," the commander ordered. Mordex lunged forward with practiced precision, his 4 arms reaching to grab and immobilize his opponent. But just like before, Jay wasn't where the Vorthak expected him to be. The human's movements were fluid and economical, redirecting force rather than opposing it. His hands found specific pressure points along Mordex's torso, and within seconds the larger warrior dropped to one knee, his limbs temporarily unresponsive. The mess hall erupted in excited chatter as cadets from every species witnessed the technique performed a second time. It clearly wasn't luck or accident, but a reproducible skill that none of them had seen before. Commander Zalfek's stalks focused intently on both cadets as Mordex recovered his mobility. "Fascinating," she said thoughtfully. "Cadet Kim, explain the principles behind your technique." The weeks following the mess hall demonstration brought changes to the Academy that nobody had expected. What started as a simple bullying incident had grown into something much larger, reshaping how different species viewed each other and themselves. Commander Zalfek had spent hours interviewing Jay about human combat philosophy, taking detailed notes about pressure point techniques and tactical thinking. Her official report described the incident not as violence, but as an innovative application of anatomical knowledge combined with superior tactical adaptation. The investigation that some instructors had demanded never materialized. Instead, something unprecedented happened. For the first time in Academy history, mixed species training teams became not just allowed, but encouraged. The rigid hierarchy based on physical strength began to crack as cadets discovered that different species brought unique advantages to military problems. Jay found himself in an unexpected position. During morning formation, cadets who had previously ignored or mocked him now watched with curious respect. The whispered jokes about soft-skinned weaklings had been replaced by genuine interest in what humans might contribute to galactic defense. The change was most dramatic among the Vorthack cadets themselves. Gexmo had struggled with his defeat for days, his pride wounded and his worldview shattered. But gradually, curiosity began to replace humiliation. During a shared tactical exercise, he approached Jay with obvious reluctance. "Your fighting method," the massive warrior said quietly, his voice lacking its usual arrogance. "It uses our strength against us." Jay looked up from the holographic battle map he was studying. "It uses intelligence against assumptions," he replied carefully. "Every species develops fighting styles based on their natural advantages, but that makes them predictable." Other cadets began gathering around their workstation, drawn by the unusual sight of a Vorthack warrior seeking human advice. Li Min joined the conversation, explaining concepts that had never been discussed in mixed company before. "On Earth, humans were never the strongest predators," she said. "We couldn't outrun the big cats or outfight the bears. So we learned to think our way out of problems instead of fighting our way through them." An Etherian cadet floated closer, her translucent form shimmering with interest. "This thinking approach," she said through her translation device, "it could apply to space combat as well? Ship tactics, not just personal fighting." "That's the idea," Jay nodded. "Every enemy expects you to use your species' traditional strengths. But what if you don't? What if you do something completely unexpected?" The group around their table continued to grow as cadets from different species contributed their own perspectives. The Klaxon discussed their hive mind coordination advantages. The Nagari shared insights about multi-limb combat techniques. Even some of the more aloof species began participating in conversations they would have ignored weeks earlier. Commander Zalthek observed these interactions from across the training deck, her sensory stalks recording everything. The organic mixing of species and ideas represented exactly what the Academy had been trying to achieve for decades, but had never successfully implemented. During evening meal periods, the segregated seating arrangements that had existed since the Academy's founding began to blur. Tables that had traditionally been dominated by single species now hosted mixed groups engaged in animated discussions about tactics, technology, and strategy. Gexmo found himself spending more time with human cadets than his own species, fascinated by their approach to problem-solving. His followers initially viewed this with suspicion, but gradually began participating themselves when they realized the strategic advantages of understanding different perspectives. "Your people survived because you adapted," Gexmo said one evening, his massive frame squeezed into a chair designed for smaller beings. "My people conquered because we dominated. But what happens when domination isn't enough?" "That's when you adapt too," Jay replied. "Every species has something valuable to contribute. The trick is learning from each other instead of competing against each other." The Academy's training programs began incorporating these new collaborative approaches. Combat simulations that had previously tested individual species strengths were redesigned to require cooperation between different types of beings. The results were remarkable. Mixed teams consistently outperformed single-species groups in complex scenarios. Months passed, and the transformation became complete. The Academy that had once resembled a collection of separate tribes competing for dominance now functioned as an integrated community, working toward common goals. Cadets who had arrived believing their species was superior to all others graduated with deep respect for the unique contributions of their classmates. At the graduation ceremony, Jay stood with his fellow cadets as Commander Zalthek addressed the assembled families and military officials. Her words carried special meaning for those who had witnessed the Academy's transformation. "This class represents the future of galactic defense," she announced. "Not because they are the strongest or the fastest or the most technologically advanced, but because they have learned to combine their individual strengths into something greater than the sum of their parts." As the ceremony concluded and cadets prepared to take their places in the galactic military, Jay reflected on how much had changed since that confrontation in the training deck. A moment of bullying that had lasted mere seconds had transformed an entire institution's culture. The rigid hierarchy based on physical dominance had given way to collaborative leadership. Species that had never worked together were now planning joint military operations. And humans, once viewed as the weakest link in galactic defense, had found their place not through matching other species' strengths, but by teaching everyone the power of adaptation and cooperation. Sometimes the greatest victories came not from overwhelming force, but from the courage to stand up when standing up seemed impossible, and the wisdom to turn conflict into understanding. The Academy's new motto, carved into main entrance hall, read simply, "Unity through diversity, strength through understanding." The end.